The war was over. After years of brutal conflict, Earth had finally won. The Joran, an alien race that had invaded the planet with their superior technology and relentless forces, had been pushed back. The streets of the capital city were filled with the sound of cheers, but even amidst the celebration, a subtle tension lingered in the air. General Catherine Steele stood at the heart of the United Earth Coalition's command center, her eyes scanning the data streams that flashed across the holographic displays. Victory was sweet, but it tasted faintly bitter. The war had cost so much. Entire cities reduced to rubble, millions of lives lost, families torn apart. The remnants of the Zoran forces were scattered, retreating to the distant corners of the galaxy. But something gnawed at Steele. She had seen the horror on the faces of her soldiers as the last of the alien ships were destroyed. It was as if the fight had only just begun. "General Steele, the reports are in. We've secured the last of the Joran strongholds," came the voice of Colonel Thorne, her trusted second-in-command. He stood next to her, his face showing the exhaustion of the long war, yet there was a spark of relief in his eyes. Steele nodded but didn't look away from the screen in front of her. "Good," she muttered, "but this doesn't feel like an ending." Thorne frowned, his voice hesitant. "It's over, General. We've done it. Earth is free." Before she could respond, a low hum vibrated through the command center, so faint it was almost imperceptible. Steele tensed, her eyes narrowing. It felt wrong. She wasn't the only one who noticed. Several other officers shifted nervously in their seats. The hum slowly grew louder, reverberating through the walls of the facility. For a moment, everyone fell silent. "Is that?" Thorne's voice trailed off, his expression uneasy. Steele's hand instinctively moved to the comms panel, broadcasting to the rest of the coalition. "All units, report. Is anyone else hearing that?" The silence on the other end stretched out for too long before a voice finally crackled through. "Negative, General. There's nothing on our end. We're still receiving green signals from all sectors." But Steele's instincts screamed otherwise. The hum was unmistakable, and it wasn't coming from any human source. It was deep primal, as if it echoed from the very core of the planet itself. The war drums, a concept humanity had forgotten in the modern era, began to stir in her memory. She had read about them in ancient texts, tales from a time when Earth was still a young world, before the rise of modern civilizations. "General, what's happening?" Thorne asked, his voice laced with uncertainty. Steele stood motionless for a moment, her mind racing. The Joran were supposed to be the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. But what if that wasn't true? What if there was something far worse? She thought back to the old legends, the stories of a force older than the stars themselves, a power so terrifying that even the Joran, with all their technology, had bowed before it. "This isn't over," Steele said, her voice low but firm. "I don't know what's coming, but we need to be ready. This is just the beginning." As the hum continued, growing louder, more distinct, the officers exchanged worried glances. It was clear. Earth's victory had been short-lived. A new battle was beginning, one that would push humanity to the brink once again. The war drums had sounded, and this time, humanity might not survive. The war drums had not stopped. At first, the hum had seemed like an anomaly, a strange echo reverberating through the Earth's core. But as days passed, the low, ominous sound became impossible to ignore. It rattled windows, trembled the walls of buildings, and sent a wave of unease sweeping through every corner of the world. General Catherine Steele had been unable to shake the feeling that something terrible was on the horizon. Though the Joran had been defeated, the sound of the drums felt like a warning, one she couldn't dismiss. Steele stood in the war room, the map of Earth projected in front of her. The zones that had once been active combat areas were now marked with green, signifying a fragile peace. But the steady pulse in the background made her skin crawl. Her fingers brushed across the edge of the console, the cool surface grounding her as she tried to focus. Thorne, who had been at her side through much of the war, was pacing. His steps were sharp, his frustration mounting. This is madness. We've come through every piece of data, every signal, and still, no one can identify where it's coming from. I know, Steele replied, her voice tight. And yet it's still here, closer every day. They weren't the only ones feeling it. Across the world, civilians spoke of strange dreams, of whispers in the night. It was as if the very air had changed. People tried to ignore it at first, chalking it up to post-war anxiety. But the silence between each pulse of the drums grew longer, and it started to gnaw at the edges of their consciousness. The sound had become a shadow, looming over the planet, growing, ever-present. What do we know about the Joran? Steele asked, turning toward her officers. Anything at all that might explain this? Lieutenant Harris, a young officer with a sharp mind, replied. Nothing unusual, General. We know their fleet was decimated, and their last remaining forces retreated back into deep space. The war drums we've been hearing don't match anything they use. It's not their technology. Steele nodded, her eyes distant as she processed the information. The Joran were gone, but their presence still lingered, like an unspoken threat that never quite disappeared. Still, this was something else. Something older. Something far more dangerous. Send out a signal, she ordered. I want every communication line open. I want every expert in the world on this. Earth cannot afford to ignore this any longer. Whatever this is, we need answers. Thorne stepped forward, his brow furrowed. And if we don't find anything, if this, whatever it is beyond our comprehension, we won't have the luxury of waiting for answers, Steele said, her voice resolute. We'll prepare. We'll train. We'll fight. Whatever is coming, humanity will stand ready. Outside, the hum seemed to grow even louder, vibrating through the very streets beneath their feet. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a presence, a tangible force, pressing against the edges of reality. Steele could feel it deep in her chest, like a pulse echoing through her own blood. Her mind raced. She thought back to the ancient stories her grandmother had told her as a child. Stories of Earth's distant past, long before the Joran, when humanity was feared across the galaxy. But those stories had been legends, myths, nothing more. Or so she had thought. General, Harris spoke up again, breaking her thoughts. We've got something. A transmission. It's coming from deep space. It's faint, but the pattern. It matches the rhythm of the war drums. Steele's heart skipped. She turned to him, urgency in her voice. What do you mean? What's the message? Harris glanced at the screen. It's not a message. It's more like a signal. But it's ancient. Whoever is sending it, they'd been waiting for a long time. For the first time in weeks, a cold chill ran through Steele. She felt it in her bones. Humanity had thought they were free. But the real battle was only just beginning. The signal grew stronger. It wasn't just a faint hum anymore. It had turned into a rhythmic pulse, like the steady beat of an unseen heart. Every day, it seemed to grow louder, more distinct, until it could no longer be ignored. The hum reverberated across the entire planet, almost as if the Earth itself was responding to the sound. A strange tension settled over humanity. General Steele had spent sleepless nights poring over every piece of data. The experts at the United Earth Coalition had all come to the same conclusion. The signal was not from the Joran, and it was not from any known enemy. It was something ancient, something far older than any civilization Earth had encountered. Steele couldn't shake the feeling that the answer was just out of reach. There had to be something she was missing. And then one night, as the signal pulsed through the air, she received an unexpected message. It wasn't from Earth. It wasn't even from the Joran or any of their allies. The message came from a race that Steele had only ever heard of in whispers, an ancient race known as the Interstellar Council. The message was clear, direct, and chilling. General Steele, we have watched your world for millennia. The drums you hear are a sign of what is to come. You are the last of the Terran Titans, and your destiny has already begun. The message was brief, but it left Steele stunned. The Terran Titans. The name rang a distant bell, something from the forgotten past, long buried beneath the rubble of history. She had heard the name as a child, in stories passed down from her grandmother, but she had never truly believed in their existence. The Terran Titans were said to be the ancient rulers of the galaxy, humans who had transcended ordinary limits, with strength and power beyond imagination. Steele couldn't believe what she was reading. The last of the Terran Titans. She felt her heart race. How could that be? She had no memories of such a past. She was just a soldier, nothing special. At least, that's what she had always thought. Without hesitation, she contacted the Interstellar Council. The Council had once been a powerful alliance of the galaxy's most advanced species, but their influence had waned over the centuries. To think that they were now reaching out to humanity was both a blessing and a curse. A figure appeared on the screen. An elder being, one who radiated ancient wisdom and power. Their skin shimmered with the light of distant stars, and their eyes glowed with an intensity that sent a chill down Steele's spine. General Steele. The figure spoke, their voice resonating with a deep, otherworldly calm. You have awakened to the drums, and with that awakening, you have stirred the powers that have been dormant for eons. You are not just any human. You are the descendant of a race that once ruled the stars, the Terran Titans. The time has come for you to embrace your true heritage. Steele felt a wave of disbelief crash over her. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The figure continued. Your victory over the Joran was no accident. They were but a small part of a much larger conflict. The drums you hear are the herald of a much greater force, the return of the Terran Titans themselves. The Titans. Steele finally managed, her voice thick with confusion. But I don't understand. I'm just one person. I don't have any powers. The figure's eyes softened. You do not remember because the knowledge of the Titans has been suppressed, hidden from you. But it is within you. The power of your ancestors courses through your veins, and when the time is right, you will awaken to it fully. The message ended, leaving Steele staring at the empty screen, her mind reeling. She had never felt more alone in her life. What did this mean for Earth? Was she truly the last of a long-forgotten race? And what did the return of the Terran Titans mean for humanity? The drums were no longer just a sound. They were a warning of something much bigger than a simple invasion. Something far darker was on the horizon, and it was up to Steele to prepare humanity for what was coming. She had to find out what the Titans were, what they wanted, and how to stop them, or if they could be stopped at all. General Steele sat motionless in the war room, the weight of the message from the Interstellar Council still heavy on her mind. The Terran Titans. She had never believed the stories. They had always seemed like ancient myths, the kind told to children around a fire. But now, faced with the undeniable truth that she was their descendant, she could no longer deny the possibility. Her heart raced as she replayed the conversation in her mind. The figure from the council had spoken with such certainty. The power of the Titans was within her. But how? How could someone like her, just a soldier, a leader of Earth's defenses, suddenly find herself connected to something so vast, so incomprehensible? A soft chime broke her thoughts, and Colonel Thorne stepped into the room. His expression was a mixture of concern and curiosity, but he knew better than to ask questions immediately. He had been with her through the war, and he understood that Steele would share only when she was ready. "What's going on, General?" Thorne asked, taking a seat across from her. "We've received reports from across the globe. People are on edge. Some are saying the hum is growing stronger, that it's changing." Steele didn't meet his gaze immediately. Her fingers drummed nervously on the table. "I've received a message from the Interstellar Council," she said quietly, her voice almost distant. "They say I'm a descendant of the Terran Titans." Thorne's eyes widened, and he blinked as if trying to comprehend her words. The Titans, The ones from the old legends. Steele nodded slowly. Yes, I don't know how or why, but they say the power of the Titans is inside me. The signal we've been hearing, the drums. It's all connected. The Titans are waking up. Thorn seemed to process the information for a moment, his face a mask of disbelief, but also an understanding. So, what does that mean for us? For Earth? I don't know yet, Steele admitted, shaking her head. But I feel something, deep inside me. It's like a force I've never felt before, a power I've never known. It's all so overwhelming. Thorn studied her, concern etched on his face. You're not alone in this, General. Whatever is coming, we'll face it together. Earth won't be alone. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to believe his words. I know, she said, her voice steadying. But we need to be prepared. The Titans are coming, whether we're ready or not. And when they arrive, they'll expect me to lead. Just as she finished speaking, a sharp vibration shook the floor beneath them. It was the same deep, rhythmic hum they had felt for days, but now it seemed more intense, more tangible. Steele stood up, her hand instinctively going to the sidearm at her waist. Thorn quickly followed her. What's happening? He asked, his voice low and filled with urgency. I don't know, Steele replied. But I feel it. The power within me. It's responding. She closed her eyes, trying to center herself, but the pulse of energy was overwhelming. She could feel something stirring deep within her, a surge of strength, of purpose. It was as though the very fabric of her being was beginning to change. The legends were right. She had always been human, but now she was something more. Suddenly, her mind was flooded with images, visions of ancient cities, of humans standing tall, commanding vast fleets, and of stars burning bright in the distant corners of the galaxy. These weren't just dreams. They were memories, fragments of a time long forgotten. Her breath quickened, and a faint glow began to emanate from her hands, subtle but undeniable. The air in the room seemed to shift, the temperature rising, as if the power she had just begun to tap into was awakening from a long slumber. Thorn took a step back, eyes wide. General, what's happening to you? Steele's voice was barely a whisper, her words laced with awe. I don't know, Colonel, but I think I'm becoming something more. The power of the Titans, it's real. It's inside me. The war drums outside grew louder, their rhythm shaking the very earth. But now, Steele wasn't afraid. The power within her, though still foreign, felt familiar. She could feel it stirring, pushing her forward. We need to get the others, she said, her voice firm again. It's time to prepare. Earth won't survive unless we face this threat head-on. Thorn nodded, a spark of determination igniting in his eyes. He had always known Steele to be a fierce leader, but now she was something else, something that might be the only thing capable of saving them all. Steele turned to the door, her mind set. The drums were a warning, but now they would become the rallying call of humanity. She was ready. Whatever the Terran Titans demanded, she would answer. The atmosphere in the war room was tense. The signal from the Interstellar Council had only added to the sense of urgency. Steele's transformation, if it could even be called that, was a mystery. No one could explain what had happened to her or what power now coursed through her veins. All they knew was that the hum, the war drums, had not stopped. They were getting closer. Steele stood at the head of the table, her mind racing with the gravity of what was to come. The world was watching. Humanity had just survived one war, and now they faced an even greater unknown. The power of the Terran Titans had awakened inside her, and it wasn't just a personal burden. It was humanity's only hope. Colonel Thorn stepped up beside her, his eyes sharp, his posture unwavering despite the chaos that had engulfed the room. He'd seen Steele in action countless times, but this was different. He could sense the change in her. She was no longer just a brilliant military strategist. There was something more now, something that made her the key to whatever came next. General, we've received a series of encrypted communications from other planetary defense units, Thorne said, his voice calm but filled with the gravity of the moment. They're reporting similar disturbances in their sectors. The hum, the war drums, they're not just localized to Earth anymore. Steele's eyes narrowed. It's spreading. Exactly, Thorne replied. There are reports of other civilizations feeling it too. Some believe it's a warning. Others think it's an invitation. An invitation. Steele repeated, confusion furrowing her brow. To what? We don't know. But we need to act fast. It's like they're being drawn to something. And if we don't figure out what it is, it could be too late. The tension in the room thickened. Steele knew what that meant. If the hum had reached other planets, then humanity wasn't the only target. The Terran Titans, their awakening, their return, was about to set something massive into motion. Something that could shake the very foundations of the galaxy. Steele exhaled sharply and turned to the map that stretched across the table. Her mind raced through countless possibilities. They needed to prepare for whatever was coming. The Earth's military might was formidable, but it was nothing compared to the power of an ancient race that had once ruled the stars. She felt a wave of responsibility settle over her shoulders. Gather all available resources, Steele said firmly, her voice commanding. We need to coordinate with every planetary defense system. I want every fleet on standby. Our technology may not be able to detect what's coming, but we can still defend ourselves, and we'll need to be ready to face the unknown. Colonel Thorne nodded. I'll get the message out immediately. Before Steele could respond, the room's lights flickered, and the deep pulse of the hum reverberated again. Louder this time, vibrating the walls and sending a chill through the air. The war drums were closer. Whatever they were signaling, it was no longer something distant. It was coming for them, and soon. Steele closed her eyes for a moment, the images of the ancient past flooding her mind again, the visions of powerful human warriors, their ships flying across galaxies, their voices echoing through the stars. She could almost feel their presence now, like a memory just out of reach. Her own connection to them was undeniable. She was one of them, their legacy was hers, and she had to lead humanity into whatever came next. We won't let them take Earth, Steele said, her voice steady and fierce. The Titans may have ruled the stars once, but this is our time now. This is our fight. Thorne met her gaze, a sense of resolve passing between them. We'll stand with you, General. Whatever comes, we face it together. Steele nodded. Get the message out. Rally the fleets. Earth is ready. As the room fell into action, Steele stepped away from the table, her mind still heavy with the weight of the task ahead. The hum was growing stronger by the minute, and she could feel the ancient power that had awakened within her rising to meet it. She had no idea what was coming, but she knew one thing for sure. Humanity would fight, and they would stand their ground. She would make sure of it. The drums of war were no longer just a sound. They were a call to arms. And Steele was ready to answer. The war room was alive with activity. Steele paced in front of the holographic displays, her mind sharp and focused despite the chaos around her. The hum, the war drums, had grown unbearably loud. Now it wasn't just a distant sound. It was as if the earth itself was trembling with the intensity of it. It was a warning. But what it was warning them about, Steele didn't know yet. Colonel Thorne had just returned from coordinating with the planetary defense units. The reports were unsettling. Every nation, every space fleet, every defense system in the world was on high alert. The hum was being felt everywhere, on Earth, on Mars, on the Moon, and even as far as the asteroid belt. The entire solar system was vibrating with the rhythm of an ancient, unseen force. General, the fleets are in position, Thorne reported, stepping into the room. His face was grim, but his voice was steady. But they're not the only ones watching. Earth isn't the only planet experiencing this phenomenon. Other systems have reported similar disturbances. Steele's pulse quickened. The Terran Titans were waking up, But this was more than just a threat to Earth. This was a galactic warning. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were being drawn into something far bigger than themselves. "Do we know what they want?" Steele asked, her voice cutting through the tension. Thorne shook his head. "The Interstellar Council has offered no further details. It seems like they're preparing for something. But what, exactly, we don't know." "Then it's up to us to figure it out," Steele said, her tone hardening. She turned toward the large map of Earth and the solar system displayed on the wall. "We can't wait for answers to fall into our laps. We need to act now, before whatever is coming arrives." The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled over them. All eyes turned to Steele, waiting for direction. She felt the full weight of the responsibility pressing down on her. Earth's future rested on the choices she made in the next few hours. But she wasn't just a leader anymore. She had become the symbol of humanity's survival. And with the power of the Terran Titans awakening within her, she knew it was her destiny to lead them through this storm. "Prepare the fleet for immediate action," Steele said decisively. "We don't know what's coming, but we'll be ready for it. I want every ship, every soldier, and every defense system operational. We need to be united, prepared for anything." A voice from the back of the room interrupted her thoughts. It was Lieutenant Harris, the young officer who had been working tirelessly to decipher the cryptic messages from the Interstellar Council. "General, we've just intercepted another transmission. It's a direct communication from the Titans." The room went still. Everyone turned toward Harris, whose face was pale as he relayed the message. "The transmission is repeating over and over. It's almost like a song, a call. It's in a language no one has ever heard before, but we're analyzing it. The best we can guess is that it's some kind of invitation, a call to join them." Steele's stomach twisted at the thought. An invitation to join the Titans. Was this truly the moment of reckoning, when humanity would either stand alongside the Terran Titans or be crushed beneath their power? "That's what the Joran feared," Steele murmured, mostly to herself. "That's why they fled." Thorne stepped forward. "General, if this is what we think it is, then humanity has to be prepared to face the full wrath of the Titans. If they're offering us a place at their side, it could be a trap." "We won't know until we face them," Steele said, meeting his gaze. "But one thing is certain, if we don't answer their call, they'll destroy us." The hum outside seemed to pulse in response, as though the earth itself was echoing her words. The war drums were not a mere signal. They were the herald of something far more terrifying, an ancient power that had been lying dormant for centuries, waiting for humanity to reach this moment. The drums had sounded. There was no going back. "We need to make our move now," Steele said, her voice steady. "Prepare for anything. The future of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, depends on how we face what comes next." As the hum intensified, Steele stood tall, feeling the weight of her lineage surge through her. The power of the Terran Titans was now hers to wield, and whatever happened next, she would lead humanity into the storm, no matter the cost. The war drums grew louder. It was no longer a distant sound, an eerie vibration that could be dismissed as a cosmic anomaly. The sound resonated through every corner of Earth, filling the air with a sense of dread, a feeling of inevitability. The planets, the stars, and even the fabric of reality itself seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the drums. Steele stood before the window of the war room, watching the skies as if expecting something to descend from the heavens. Outside, the atmosphere seemed thick with tension. Military forces from every corner of the globe had gathered, ready for what was coming. But even they could sense it. Something beyond their understanding was drawing near. "General, the fleets are in position." Thorne's voice broke through her thoughts. He was standing at the doorway, looking every bit as worn as she felt. "All systems are operational, but there's still no sign of them." Steele turned to face him, her expression resolute but strained. "We know they're coming. It's only a matter of time now." The door to the room slid open again, and a young officer stepped in, his face pale. "General, we've got a visual confirmation from the outer reaches of the solar system. There's something massive, approaching." A cold chill ran down Steele's spine. She could feel the air around her crackling with energy. This was it. This was the moment she had prepared for, the moment humanity had been waiting for. The arrival of the Terran Titans, or whatever force had been awakened within her. "Show me," Steele commanded, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. The officer quickly pulled up a holographic display, and the room fell silent as the image appeared. A massive, glowing object, an enormous ship, unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, was hurtling toward Earth. It was colossal, its edges shimmering with a light that seemed to bend reality itself. It wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol, a relic of an age long past. "This is it," Steele murmured. "The Terran Titans have returned." Thorne's face was grim as he studied the display. "That's no ordinary ship. It's enormous. Do we have any idea what it is?" Steele's mind raced. She had no doubt now that this was the vessel of the Titans, their herald. It had come for her, for humanity. But was it a sign of alliance or conquest? "I don't know, Colonel," Steele replied, her voice heavy. "But we can't afford to wait any longer. They want something, and we need to find out what it is. I won't let Earth be caught off guard again." The hum outside was louder now, so powerful it rattled the very walls. The drums had become a constant presence, not just a sound, but a force that seemed to drive everything forward. A call, a challenge, an invitation. The ship drew closer, and Steele felt an undeniable pull, something that called to her, deep within her soul. It was as if the power of the Terran Titans, the ancient power that had once flowed through her ancestors, was now fully awake inside her. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. "Prepare to send a message," Steele ordered, her voice sharp. "We need to respond to their arrival. We can't just wait for them to land. If they're here to talk, we need to be ready." Thorne nodded. "A diplomatic message." "Not just a message," Steele said, her voice growing cold with determination. "A challenge. If they think they can come here and just take what they want, they're wrong. We're ready to fight for this planet, for our people." The tension in the room was palpable as the officers began preparing the communication systems. Steele could feel the pull of the ship, the pressure of the coming confrontation, but she also felt something else. Her ancestors, the Terran Titans, were speaking through her now. She had their strength, their courage. It was time to face the truth of who she was. "We will not bend," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "We will stand our ground." The ship was now within the atmosphere, and its size was staggering. It blocked out the stars behind it, casting a shadow that stretched across Earth. No one spoke. They all knew that the moment of truth was at hand. Steele turned to face the screen once more. "This is it. Humanity's future starts now." The drums outside continued their relentless beat, and Steele knew that the time for answers had arrived. Whatever the Titans wanted, whatever they demanded, she would meet them head-on, with the full power of her lineage and the people of Earth behind her. The war had begun. The massive ship loomed over Earth, its presence casting a shadow so large it seemed to swallow the stars. It wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of an ancient power, a relic from a time before humanity's rise. Every inch of Steele's being screamed with anticipation as she stood in the war room, her gaze locked onto the ship's approach. The drums outside continued their relentless rhythm, growing louder with every passing second. "General, the transmission is ready," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice tight with the pressure of the moment. "We're prepared to send your message." Steele didn't answer right away. She could feel the pull of the ship, a connection that seemed to reach into her very soul. The power of the Terran Titans, a power she had only just begun to understand, was coursing through her, urging her to act. She could almost hear their voices, ancient and resonant, calling to her. "Send it," she said finally, her voice firm. The screen in front of her came to life, displaying the colossal figure of the ship hovering just above the Earth's surface. The message she had prepared was simple: a challenge, an invitation to meet, but also a declaration that humanity would not bend, would not submit without understanding the purpose of their arrival. As the transmission sent, the hum outside faltered, replaced by a profound silence that felt like the calm before a storm. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. Time itself seemed to hold its breath as the vast ship hovered motionless in the sky. Then, without warning, a deep voice boomed through the war room speakers. It was a voice that carried the weight of centuries, cold and ancient, but there was also something almost familiar in its tone. It wasn't an alien voice at all. It was a voice Steele recognized, though she couldn't say why. Terran descendant. The voice intoned. You have answered our call. The time of judgment has come. You are the legacy of the first. The power of the Titans flows through your veins. You must choose, join us, or stand against us. Your people will follow your lead. The words sent a shiver through Steele's body. She could feel the power of the voice vibrating in her bones. There was no question now. This was the moment of reckoning. This was why the hum had begun, why the war drums had sounded. The Titans were offering humanity a place at their side, but Steele knew that acceptance came at a cost. She stood tall, steadying herself as the weight of the decision pressed upon her. She wasn't just representing herself anymore. She was representing Earth, humanity's future, and the legacy of the Terran Titans. The choice was hers, but it was bigger than any one person. Tell them this, Steele said, her voice clear and unwavering. We will not be your servants. If you seek to claim Earth, you must do so over our dead bodies. We will stand and fight for our freedom, for the future of humanity. But we will not bow. The room fell silent as the transmission went through. For a moment, there was no response, only the faint buzzing of the ship's presence overhead. The air itself felt charged, as if the world was holding its breath. Then, the voice returned, softer now, yet still commanding. Very well, Terran descendant. You have chosen the path of defiance. Know this, those who stand against the Titans do not simply oppose us. They oppose their own legacy. Prepare yourselves. The transmission cut off, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Steele exhaled slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She had made the choice. Humanity had made the choice. But as she looked around at the faces of those who had followed her into this moment, she saw determination, not fear. We fight, she said, her voice strong. For Earth, for our future, for the freedom of every human being who still believes in their right to stand, to be free. We will not fall to them. Not today. The war drums resumed, louder than ever, as if answering her challenge. The sound filled the room, reverberating through the walls, the earth beneath their feet. The battle had begun. Outside, the ship remained in the sky, its shadow casting a long, dark streak across the planet. But this time, it wasn't a sign of oppression. It was a call to arms. And Steele, with the weight of her ancestors and the future of humanity on her shoulders, was ready to answer.